Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Particle Accelerator Podcast, where we talk to future thinking business leaders about how to grow their team and accelerate their business. I'm here today with Scott Preston, and I'm really excited about this episode. So, every factory, restaurant, and industrial plant in North America is doing something right now that costs them real money. They're venting heat they already paid for straight out of the exhaust stack. My guest today figured out how to take that wasted energy and put it back to work. Scott Preston is the founder and CEO of Norell Inc. and the brand ThermStar System, a technology born in Sweden, validated across Europe for over a decade, recognized by the World Wildlife Fund as a climate solver, and now finally coming to North America. Scott's not a first-time entrepreneur. He's a former CEO of $1 billion industrial companies, and he's led global supply chain across 44 countries, and he's closed nearly $3 billion in M&A. Now he's betting it all on a box the size of a mini fridge that turns dirty exhaust into clean energy. Scott, welcome to the Particle Accelerator.
Thank you, Ben. And man, what an intro. I wish I could get those all the time.
You bet. Yeah, you can have it. It's yours. Awesome. Well, I'm super excited. Just a couple of get to know you questions. Tell me how you made your first buck as a human being. It's just a way I love to kick off the show. Where'd you grow up? And just tell me briefly, how'd you make your first dollar as a human being?
Wow, great question. So I grew up in New Jersey. Two working parents, first-time college graduates for both of them. And they implored really this whole belief of you've got to work hard. You've got to earn it. And so my first job when I was 14, I may have told the paper company I was 15, was I delivered papers.
Me too. Yeah.
And so, you know what? They said you had to be 15. I think I was pretty close. It was a summer job, so I was maybe a month away from my birthday. But delivered papers. And then from there, I started cutting grass. Because Guess what? My dad had a lawnmower, and I was already doing it as a chore, so why not make an extra couple of bucks and start going around to the neighbors? So that was my first experience of, bringing papers early in the morning and cutting grass later on during the school summers.
Yeah, and as you were growing up, what was your favorite topic or subject in school, and what was your least favorite topic in school subject?
Favorite topic. Okay, this is a little nerdy, but I really loved geography and I loved math.
Awesome.
I loved geography because I really thought it told the story of the world. Like why so many things have happened because of just the natural geography of things. That made me curious. And then when it came to, least favorite subject, reading comprehension and penmanship. I remember I had a teacher, Mr. Abamont. If you're listening, thank you. But at the same point, that was a brutal class, getting my penmanship correct.
Yeah, that's cool. So getting right into it, you've led billion-dollar operations across 4 continents. Tell me about the trigger point in your career where you started thinking that there's a massive energy opportunity nobody's touching.
Yeah. Great question. So I think, a lot of trends happen when you're in a worldwide role in other places first because of the energy expense. So one of the great things about my role was when you start going around to other continents and when energy is 2, 3, 4 times as expensive as we've been fortunate with in this country, you have to come up with creative energy solutions. And so I would see the advantages of solar, wind, other renewables, energy efficiency, and factor it into this industrial background that I've had. Working in plants, working across different types of environments, whether that's rural or inner city or suburban, but it was the same trend. Why can we not be more energy efficient? And I believe energy efficiency is a foundational element for competitiveness. And if there's one thing I firmly believe in is that businesses need to thrive and be competitive. And one of the ways to do it is reduce your costs in a way that's not just about looking at reducing people or headcount. It's about reducing systemic cost in a business and energy costs do that.
Yeah, that's cool. Was there a specific facility or faculty type, facility type that crystallized it for you?
Yeah, I was great question. I was in Australia, and we were out just the western side in Perth. Quick distinction: the one city in the world that's the furthest from any other city in the world is Perth, Australia. So here I was out there in Perth, Australia, and we were up at a mining site. And at that mining site, energy was really expensive to bring in there, over 100 miles away from the nearest energy source. So I'm looking at that thinking, every drop of energy we save doesn't have to be transported at great cost here. And that starts the mind thinking, well, what could you do differently? Well, a lot of our process exhaust, heat-based exhaust, was full of particulates. There was no solutions. So people kept saying, guess what? You use energy twice and you're going to pay for it twice. What's great about what I think we're going to get into at ThermStar is we can use energy twice and pay for it once. That is groundbreaking.
Yeah, that's really cool. Tell me a little bit more about your story. Like, you were running Monster Tree Service, you've done some other thing in the background. Did you start looking for this and find ThermStar and then say, hey, I want to help you run North America ThermStar? Or just tell me about how this kind of came about, because I bet that's a compelling story.
Thanks. So yeah, here's the thing. I was looking for something in the renewable space that hadn't been brought. I didn't know this existed. I didn't know, just as most people in North America that probably listen to this podcast will find out, what do you mean there's something for dirty air heat reclamation? Because everything we had tried industrial failed miserably, plugged, clogged, etc. So during a business trip in Europe, and I was talking to some different friends and asking them, what have you seen? What have you heard? A friend led me to another friend of a friend who said, we're doing something really novel. We've got this Lipido technology for heat recovery. And I said, sounds too good to be true. And I went and checked it out. And after doing a lot of due diligence and meeting with the founders and really meeting with customers and digging in, I said, holy cow, this thing's real. I was blown away. That night I called my friends, I called my wife, and I said, you will never believe what I just uncovered. I didn't know this existed because they were just focused in Europe and hadn't really brought this to North America. So I said, wait a second, why can't we take this Lipido technology, bring it here, and bring it under an umbrella that I created called ThermStar? So the ThermStar system is foundational Lipido heat recovery technology. We like to call it dirty air, clean energy, right? Dirty air, clean energy, transform it into usable thermal power, and then take that and be able to go forward and say, let's put it so it's application neutral. And what I mean is I can preheat air, I can preheat water, I can do building comfort heating, all the things you said in the intro, which are spot on. Where else do you get that opportunity? So I was jazzed up, as you probably hear me saying now, excited, thought this really needs to come to this country. And so that's what I've been working on. And that's what I've built the team around. And that's why I'm so thrilled and excited to talk to you about ThermStar today.
Yeah, so walk us through the technology from dirty exhaust stack to recovered. So dirty exhaust stack becomes recovered energy. In terms the CFO can understand, like, what are we actually looking at?
Yeah, so I'm going to break this into two pieces. The first is just the mechanics of it, and the second is the economics. So let's talk mechanics first. You look on a rooftop, you see vented thermal air. So it could be a quick service restaurant, it could be a factory, it could be anywhere where they are venting process gases today. Why are they venting it? Because it's the engineering standard, because this technology didn't exist before. So you've got that venting. There's a pipe, there's steam, there's energy coming off it. What we do is we connect ventilation to that. So extra ventilation to where that stack normally comes out. Attach this device, this Lapido device, as part of the ThermStar system, this patented, wonderful, as we talked about, World Wildlife Fund Climate Solver technology that's won 8 awards, that's got 42 plus patents, that has taken over 10 years and $10 million on what looks like a box, but it's what's inside the box is magic. It's really magic that works. You take that piping for the ventilation, you take the box, and attached inside of that box are special coils. Those coils are set up in a staggered manner in a proprietary geometry to allow the particulates to flow through. We say 98 plus percent of the particulates still flow through. So if you were venting them before, you're going to vent them after we're done, right? We're not taking the particulates out. We're taking the heat out. We're taking the energy from the heat out, transferring it into the coil. That's step one. So now we've gone from heat in the airspace over to the coil. Now it's in the coil. That coil, typically having some type of glycol or other solution because it's up on the roof, we need it to be rooftop rugged and ready for weather conditions, transfers it into a closed loop system. That closed loop system now moves the thermal energy via pump to where we're going to use it. So where do we want to use it? We have 3 different ways that we use this energy. You can use it to preheat water. So as boiler pre-feed, you want to do that. You can preheat air into a process. So as an example would be a dryer or any other type of curing area where they need to bring in hot air. Or the third is building comfort heating, which is seasonal, but depending upon when you need to have building comfort heating for your office or other space, within the facility. So those are the 3 places, and that's done through a coil on the other side. That coil is either heating air or heating water, right? And so that's the way this system works. It's got sensors on it, so we can track what's happening. We know temperature, we know humidity, we understand what's happening with pressure drop. We get to see BTUs being created and show what the energy is. Validated, real, and overall within a ThermStar system. That's the mechanics. The economics are great. Now you're talking about taking something that's a pure waste. You're getting 0 for it. And we now say you're going to get, at the lowest end, half of your money back out of what you're wasting. On the better end, up to 65%. So 50 to 65% of that total energy value that you're wasting. You have no idea how much that's worth anyway, because it's just waste. We're going to turn that energy into something that you can translate. What does that mean in ROI terms? Under 3-year ROI without incentives, very typical. And most utilities now see heat recovery as something that they believe makes sense. And so they provide additional incentives, which typically brings the ROI between 1.5 to 2 years, depending on the utility, depending on the specifics. So a CFO, I'd tell them, this is your chance to be able to say, A, I've got a project that's going to have a great ROI. I can't invest my money in the stock market and make 33% or greater. Nope. Number 2, I'd tell them, do you believe that lowering structurally your costs is good for business and makes you thrive? Yes. Right. And number 3, I'd tell them, don't you want to also then have all of these things wrapped in something which is a sustainable technology? You create an energy asset on site from what was a waste. Does that impact what you can say to the market, to your investors, to your employees about what you do and believe in for the planet? Because in a typical installation at a factory, one particular heat source saves over 90 tons of CO2 a year.
Yeah. So this is a super exciting innovation. So I think we're gonna probably kind of rewind and come back to some of this because it's just such a strong value proposition. The first follow-up question I have is going to back up a little bit to, so the Lapido unit is kind of the core IP, but what was it about the European design that solved the clogging problem? Because like you got all this dirty air coming through, but you're passing the dirty through. You mentioned geometry. You don't have to give us any trade secrets. But what was it about this design that solved the clogging problem that's killed other attempts?
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing because if you think about it, heat exchangers, heat recovery technology has been around for a very long time, right? Every engineer, every plant manager that's got some type of heat exchanger in there somewhere within a process or building. Heck, as you drive your car, what's a radiator, right? A radiator on a car is just another version of a heat exchanger. But let's think about that. What does a radiator look like? You see all those tight fins. When you look at it, you can't see through a radiator, right? You're not meant to. And it's because the goal of most heat exchangers, just like a radiator in your car, is to be very efficient and dispel heat, okay? But what it's not good at is what happens when it gets dirty. So have you ever driven through like a big, storm where there's lots of bugs and they hit your windshield and you think, I'm going to clean the windshield. You ever look at your radiator? You ever see that sometimes it just damages and hits that radiator and now you've got fins that are bent and you've got all this junk? Well, this technology has no fins. So now it's instead, it is tubes. It's a tubular setup, staggered, with proprietary geometry, with the right type of aluminum alloy for heat transfer, with the right type of CFD, which is computational fluid dynamics, type of airflow management and monitoring, no different than the CFD that you would see that they use for race cars, right, in F1. How do they know when things are flowing correctly? So you get all of those images, you understand that, and it allows what seems like, I call it magic, but it's fantastic in reality. You get heat transfer with very minimal buildup and 98% of the particulates go through. So it's groundbreaking.
Yeah, and then you described humidity as an advantage. Most operators run from the humid exhaust. They want the heat transfer system to be mostly dry, but ThermStar wants the humidity. Can you explain why?
Yes, it's so I'm going to use a word that some of your listeners may not know, and they get a chance to look up later, and I'll try to explain it. It's called enthalpy, Enthalpy. That is the secret to all this. Enthalpy means that there's two ways that you create heat and heat transfer. One is sensible heat, and one is latent. And what those basically mean is sensible heat is the dry. Okay? Dry, your air's coming through, it's dry. The more airflow, the more temperature, the more energy. It's basically what it is. Latent heat has to do with what they call phase change. Going from a vapor, humidity vapor, into actually a water state. When you go to phase change, it unlocks energy. And it's an amazing principle of just how things work. So we love this because this device, this Lapido, does sensible heat transfer and latent. So you get both. And the more humidity, the more latent heat transfer. I'll give you an example. We just worked on a project and we found out that they have 35% humidity. 35% humidity in there. Every other heat exchanger would say that doesn't work. For us, I turn 35% and I turn that into pure energy at a greater rate than they could ever believe. And it wound up being that now, even when we turn down the fan speed, because they want to move to a different application with a lower fan speed, and we look at that, because of the 35% humidity, I gain them more energy than they had on a faster fan speed with less humidity. That's not
that's cool.
That's not what people think. But the
Yeah.
reality is that we love humidity. Our device, the Lapido at the core of ThermStar, becomes a heat recovery fantastic machine in this condensing mode, condensing energy out of hot vapor onto that coil, which transfers it into the energy of the closed loop circuit, and it works phenomenally well at that.
Yeah, and I just want to dispel a misconception that I think folks might have if you just covered this on the surface, right? So we're taking the hot, dirty air from on top of the smokestack, and then we're running it through the heat exchanger, and then we're giving that as climate air in the store. That's clean. That's not taking. That's not like sucking the exhaust fumes off of your car and getting sick from it. If you thought about this quickly, you could potentially have a misconception that this is dirty air equals dirty air. But no, you're taking the dirty air, you're cleaning it, and then providing it in those three use cases you mentioned. One of which is supportive climate air. So that's like awesome. Like you mentioned that there's some real world use cases around restaurant franchises where they have the kitchen, obviously constantly producing exhaust heat. That might be greasy exhaust heat, but it's still tons of exhaust heat coming through the restaurant. The ovens are always on, the stove's always on, the broiler is running, cooking the food, and then you're using that to keep the dining room comfortable for folks. And it's like I can see like the ROI on this is very clear. Like you're printing money because you're leveraging a disposable asset into a cost and energy savings.
You're right, and I one just small tweak to what you said, just for your listeners, if I could, Ben, which is we don't say that we clean the air; we provide clean energy. So the particulates still come out, right? And you're right, we do not use the dirty air at all. So some people, when they first hear this, think, "Wait a second, I don't want to use and recycle that hot, dirty air. There's a reason I'm venting it. I want it gone." And we still say, you're right. It's still gone, right? But imagine if we can strip out the energy value of the hot, dirty air and say now it is less hot, but still dirty air that you vent. And what we do is reuse it. Now, there's a hidden benefit in many cities here, which is we reduce the heat island effect. Because the heat island effect happens when you have lots of places in, cities that are emitting these type of warming thermal energy that they're venting. If I'm now not doing that at the same temperature, because I'm taking temperature out of the exhaust. So as an example, you're an industrial laundry. Your normal exhaust is approximately 180 F. And now, after running it through our Lapido in the ThermStar system, it's now going to be at 130 F, let's use as an example. Well, that's 50 less degrees that's going into the air for every one of those exhausts at that facility that's got ThermStar. Now compound that and scale that to the restaurants, the other kitchens, the other businesses that are doing this. That's a lot less heat energy that's going into the lower environment there, which heats up a city that retains that heat because of the concrete and all the other surfaces. So you get a minimization of some heat island effect as a side benefit, in addition to everything with the energy savings and with the CO2 reduction because you're using less fuels. So there's a number of great wins in this.
Yeah. So let's go back to the ROI math on a real world install. What does a typical mid-sized commercial facility actually see on their energy bill, and how long does the payback take?
Sure. So let's start with, let's use an example, right? I'm going to use an example of you're a restaurant. Let's start as a restaurant level. You're a restaurant, quick service restaurant. You're you could be burgers, it could be chicken, it could be any number of things, right? It applies to all of them. You come in, you turn on the grill when you first start in the morning, let's use 7 a.m., and you shut that off at the end of the day, and it's now 9 at night. Very kind of typical QSR. You're open 7 days a week except for major holidays. Okay. That type of restaurant sees on average a 36% reduction is what we've seen in case studies. So you're talking about just under a 3-year payback with no incentives. So now you start applying incentives to it and you say, well, what is that worth? Well, because you've now reduced energy usage there, most utilities will give you a one-time amount of money varying from $1 for every cubic meter of gas or therm of gas that you save, and that typically pays for 20 to 50% upfront of the cost of the equipment, just depending upon what the utility is, in addition to what's there. And then certain states like New York State and others have other incentives that you can apply for. So it starts to get really interesting. It's already compelling on its own, and then you add these additional pieces to it. Now, change that to a laundry where higher volume, more machines, right? Lots of things that would normally clog because of lint and fibers. And the case study that we have has a 63% confirmed reduction in natural gas use. And that was done over a 6-month extended pilot at the site with that customer. And now we've continued to grow with that customer. So these are the type of things that are transformational for a business. How often can you get these type of savings from other things? Even if you bought new equipment today, you went out to a manufacturer, you rang them up and said, I'm ready for a new grill at my restaurant. And I want to save money on this grill with energy. What type of energy savings can you promise me?
Yeah, minimal probably.
5 to 10%. They're not going to give you 36%. It's not going to happen, right? And then on top of that, you've got to now, that's assuming that you maintain the burner and you do all the other things that are correct, and there's lots of caveats. But guess what? Every day when you operate, you're venting thermal energy as a waste. So why not, instead of paying for energy twice, pay for it once? Get a chance to reuse it.
Yeah, and then so just from my seat, being a fractional CTO and owning a data company, I'm really interested in the data platform, the ThermStar Power Intelligence. And you talked about that moving from dark to light. What does that unlock for customers that they didn't have before? Imagine now you're able to tell them how much heat they're emitting, when they're emitting it, and that's giving businesses a new form of intelligence that they just didn't have. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's the waste side of most businesses is unmeasured. When we go into businesses, the single biggest challenge they have is they say, I don't know how much I have. I don't know how much waste I have, right? Because it's just being vented. They can tell me how many days they're running. They can tell me a lot of different things. So now, when we can start to quantify for them, this is how much energy, based on standard energy calculations that we utilize as part of a simulation exercise and deep analysis with them, we say, here's the energy potential. So that first step is like an awakening. Like, really? I had no idea, because they're focused on so many other things. Then when you install the system and you hook it up to ThermStar Power Intelligence, now they get to see, so you're telling me I really am emitting 178 degrees today, and now it's 180, and I see it climb to 181. You said it was 180. I see the range. Okay, tick the box. All right, now the next thing, they're like, so how much of that energy am I actually getting? Oh, I can see it in the loop because I see a sensor there. Okay, I see that now you're moving that over at 150 degrees. Well, that's exciting. Okay, and now it shows that you're using it to preheat my process air into my dryer, into my oven, right? Okay, and I can see I'm getting it 140. So you're telling me that I now, every day, regardless of temperatures outside, start at 140 degrees. Wow, right? So it completely changes the economics, and the colder the climate, the more adverse that condition is, the greater that ROI. But the beauty of this is that because our system goes up, Ben, to 450 degrees, right? We can handle exhaust up to 450. The reality is that even if you said to me, I want to put this in Miami, and my process is 450 degrees, even if the average temperature in Miami is 80 degrees year round, I'm going to be generous. It's not. But let's use 80. Right? 370 degrees, they still have to heat to get to 450.
Right.
Well, guess what? Instead of heating for 370, what if I can flip it around and say, I'll give you 370?
Right.
You heat 80.
Right.
It completely flips this on its head. And that's where, based on the temperature, etc., this becomes a nationwide solution, especially as you get to higher temperatures. In the lower temperature range, it's certainly more beneficial in northern tier geographies or mountains or other places in more of the central area. But you've got tremendous opportunity across the US and Canada for this.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I mean, I think we've really pulled the vision and the value from what ThermStar is building and the tech they have. I want to take some of your time to leverage your breadth of experience. You've been on the other side running operations for companies with massive infrastructure. What surprised you most about being the founder who has to build all that from zero?
So it's it's a great question because I've got good friends in industry who ask me this. Who are saying, they're like, Scott, it looks like you're really enjoying what you're doing, and they're considering leaving industry. So they ask me, what do you think? What's it like? It seems great. And I say to them, you have to be willing to put on so many different hats every day. When I was the chief operating officer of a $1 billion plus company, as you mentioned, you've got staff for things, right? You've got all these different functional supports. You have an HR issue, I ring the phone or send an email to HR. IT issue, ditto, and on and on. In here, I wind up with, a select group of small people within our company. We're less than 10 people. So we've got a small team, and that means that we've got to rely upon people wearing hats. I mean, just before this, I've already had 6 different functional things that I've been working on that I would never do as a COO, where I'd be much more operational P&L type of driven, right? Dealing with an IT challenge because, this is what we're seeing from this provider. Here's a different data issue there. Oh, now switch gears. Now we've got this HR piece that we're doing on hiring. What do you mean I can't give that to HR? Well, that's going to be something that, I'll have to jump in and handle and give this to somebody else. And so you just have to be willing to do that. And the other thing is, it makes you very acutely aware of where every dollar of your money is being spent. Because unlike some folks where they decided, hey, I'm going to go and get lots of investor money and be really diluted, I believe in this so much that I've self-funded. And I continue to be 100% self-funded. And the reason for that is I see such great potential and growth opportunities that I'm very vested. And when you're vested that way, you watch each and every dollar and you make sure you're making the right decisions for the business.
Yeah, I mean, owning a P&L, there's something very difficult but also alluring about owning your own P&L. And it makes me wonder, what's harder, building the product or the so you're owning your P&L, and that's a different lesson than what corporate life teaches you. And then I also like the way you're positioned because you have a proven product in the European market, and you've established yourself as an exclusive North American partner. Mm-hmm. And so in the way you've developed that, I wonder what's harder, the product itself or now your challenge, which is the market education.
So I think it's a two-stepper, right? They're both individual challenges. It starts first with the product as in ThermStar System, because as you rightly said, Lapido in Europe as a component, it's an amazing killer component, right? Best in class. But it's a component. And they sell it as a component, not as a fully integrated system. So the first goal was really to spend the right amount of time, resources, people, partnerships, etc., to build the framework around it. So, feel very fortunate that we've got a 30 plus year building energy management company that helped us on the tech side. And I know you're a tech guy, so you can appreciate that, right? For the work within their SaaS and customizing it to fit our needs for the North American market. So that was a big a big ask, a build, right? To be able to put that forward as part of now what we offer as a platform, because we're a platform. And then from that platform, then once you've got it and you've built out all the other components and you've tested it and you're there, now it's about market education, right? You go to the market with this and explain this is where we are. So, just had a lunch and learn earlier this week, Monday actually, and the whole conversation with those engineers was all about here's what we can do in a specific market. And that particular market, which is very exciting for us, happens to be New York City because of all of their specific local law 97 carbon reduction, carbon penalty type of setup, which really opens some doors for us because nobody is doing dirty air heat reclamation.
Right.
And so we brought to them dirty air, clean energy. This is what we can do. And they're like, again, what do you mean? And so, it's that education, it's that information. And then, for all of your listeners, what I would tell you, the way we work is very simple. We ask, provide us with some base level information. We have a form. It's a one pager. Fill out some information on it. Temperature, flow rate, hours of operation, etc. And there's a few other questions. Come back to us. We provide a desktop level, high level, free, is there some type of opportunity here? And then based upon that, then we dig deeper with the client, right? Or the client and their advisor, if it's an engineering firm or if it's somebody else that's in that chain, and say, now let's talk about how we would go a step deeper. How would we really uncover to make sure we understand, are there any specific constraints about inside mounting versus rooftop? What we can do, etc. So we get into more of the weeds. But the good news is you can start all of this on a complementary type of assessment.
Yeah. You're at an interesting inflection point. So IoT sensors, a white labeled SaaS platform, and sensing that your current vendor may eventually hit a ceiling on the customer insight layer you'll need. What do you think about build versus buy versus partner as a startup CEO in that situation?
So I'm a huge fan of partner. I really believe strongly that there's only so many things that you can build concurrently from scratch. So if I'm going to do that, I want to focus on the best of breed solutions, tech, bright minds, people who've been doing this. That's why I chose that vendor for that level of IoT solution. And one of the next aspects that we'll be putting onto this platform will be an analytics platform, because guess what? As we get all this robust data and we can anonymize it and look at it broadly, think of the trends and the information that we can share on a waste side that's unmeasured. Nobody knows, right? It doesn't exist. So the amount of insights and data and things that we'll be able to get, the way we'll be able to feed this into an AI and other solution is really exciting to us, and that's on our roadmap.
Well, and I think with that analytics, you now have the opportunity to pursue what you mentioned, the carbon credits, and almost like an ancillary service that then does the application for that and the proof of that, and like helps them pursue some of that climate money, for lack of a better term, which is just like another like huge value add. Like not only are we going to set this up, give you the benefit, help you reduce your energy bill, but now we're also going to go unlock access to other programs with the data that we're collecting through the application. So it's like just a compounding value add once you have the appliance installed.
You're absolutely right. And one of the first things when you start talking about broader ecosystem value, whether that's carbon credits, whether that's understanding the validity of this, so when public companies or private companies for that matter go to their boards or their investors or their stakeholders and say, this is what we're doing, how can you validate it, right? If it was previously unmeasured, you can't. But now through ThermStar System and the Power Intelligence platform, you can measure it, know what it's worth, show what the benefit is, and then use that for scaling within those operations to say, I put it at one site, look at the benefit I'm getting. Now I want to put it at 5, 10, you pick the number all the way through, because I want to continue all these benefits. And now what can it mean in terms of, are they a company that they can say, I'm more green, I'm more sustainable, but also I'm more economically viable, right? I have a level of competitiveness because of how I've reduced energy exposure. And in times like today, here we are talking while there's an awful lot going on in the energy markets because of the disruption in the Strait of Hormuz and what that's doing. Wouldn't it be nice to know you have an energy asset on site that can actually produce and clean energy and do that while reducing your exposure to market forces? Mm-hmm. This is the ideal time. And it really says that, energy markets are fragile. They change rapidly. And most people don't have that hedged or locked because of that movement, right? You don't want to lock it up at this price and then all of a sudden it drops for something you didn't know or control, because it's an uncontrollable thing, price. But what is controllable, and we help you control with this asset, is the amount of energy usage.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So enterprise accounts versus SMBs, the sell is fundamentally different. How are you sequencing the market? Are you going enterprise first or planting flags across many smaller sites? You mentioned earlier kind of a franchise model where, the install might be a bunch of smaller stores. Sounds like you're saying pretty enterprise focused.
We are right now. The main goal is we're going with key enterprise accounts in the sectors that we want to start with, which are really industrial laundry, food production, and restaurants. Now, why? Because we have very well established and clear case studies in all of those. That's usually a prerequisite for how you can start the conversation with these accounts. We have great comfort in how they work. There's hundreds of installs already in those three buckets in Europe. Now, as Europe continues to expand, because we're talking here, but Lapido continues to sell every day in Europe. So as Europe continues to expand into all these other manufacturing adjacent heat utilizing type of manufacturing assets, you build up even more case studies. You build up even more, and then that's a natural progression for us to leverage and use that while we're also building up our footprint in enterprise accounts. But make no mistake, if you, Ben, came to me and said, by the way, I know I haven't told you, but I happen to own a quick service restaurant, and I would love to save up to 36% of my energy bill, so let's have a conversation. I'm not going to say, sorry, Ben, I'm not
of course,
right? I'll be interested in the conversation, and let's see what we can do together. But it's not an area I'm going to spend targeted marketing or other dollars on today to try to acquire that today. I want to find early adopters who believe in technology advancement, new introduction of a technology that can change their operational footprint on energy efficiency.
Yeah, we're such a full stack software development firm. So one of our things that we're doing as we kind of move up funnel, kind of grow up, is we're focusing on a particular sector. Franchise tech is one of our industry specialties. So we've built software, a couple of restaurant point of sales, and really focused on the management of the multiple franchise. So the franchise is an interesting problem because you have, like if you're an Applebee's, for an example, you may have items on the menu that you just can't source at your particular, like at your particular franchise restaurant. So you have influences in the menu process that are coming from your location, while the national franchise has things that they're promoting that like you need to have on the menu. Like you can't be a Chili's and not have an El Presidente margarita. Like it's just not right. Like so we've solved that and handled some of these like really complex franchise problems, and would love to that would be a place where we could collaborate because I think exposing. We're currently looking for franchise customers. Even there's just a new problem that happens as you're trying to expose your franchise and handle those individual restaurants. And it kind of also, we've seen this in healthcare clinics. Hearing aids has gone from clinical to now being an FDA over-the-counter item, and so the collecting data from the different clinics and now internalizing that data and saying, hey, how do we take this data that we've collected from clinics, anonymize it, and then go after the broader market has been a really awesome kind of sector for us to focus on.
Well, your experience in franchises, I mean, as you mentioned earlier, I came out of after corporate, went into a franchise business and built it and was very fortunate to build it with a great team to the largest in that whole overall nationwide ecosystem, and then sold that business. So a lot of exposure and experience in that franchising aspect. And so we see franchising as a way to be able to get in, see it, and then go from scaling at one unit to scaling at multiple units because you've proved it. Prove to me that it has the efficacy. I'm going to see it in the bill. I'm going to see it on the screen. Great. Now let's rinse and repeat and do that duplication effort for scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. So what's next? You mentioned a second product is already in motion addressing odor in exhaust, not just heat. How does that fit in the Norell platform, and what does that product roadmap look like over the next 24 months?
Yeah, so one of the big things for us is that as we start talking about people's exhaust, one of the big drivers in that is people say, well, what about the actual energy? In that energy content is also odor. And in that odor, they're like, well, I've got more odor complaints than I get anything, especially if you're, close to residential and based upon the prevailing winds. So we've started discussions with a number of different companies to explore what would be ways to do that and tie it in, because we're already up either on the roof or in the exhaust system, and why can't we work that in? And so we've got some plug and play functionality where, based upon standard API connections and others, we could bring in this data, understand what's happening, and say, we can make a difference on an area that the customer really wants to address, and be able to do that. That's part of it. The other is where we're really looking to see how we can call out that this technology is in locations when there is any type of consumer facing or consumer type of atmosphere. So as an example, you go up to a restaurant today, you look on the glass of their restaurant, and you might see that they've got, we're Michelin star, or we're, here's our rating and here's our health safety rating. Imagine in the future if it can say ThermStar inside, or, do something along those lines that's part of a green accreditation that supports that. Work with other organizations to be able to incorporate this as another precursor element to achieving certain types of certification levels. So those are all things on the roadmap where we say plug into existing ecosystems that recognize the right type of, I'll call it, behavior and attributes, because this product has so many benefits. And why not be able to extol that and then let the customer know, hey, this establishment meets those criteria. So that's also part of it.
Yeah, that's cool. Like that certification or that attestation of clean energy is growing in importance. Totally.
So that's on the roadmap. And in addition to that, there's another product that we are considering bringing to the market here that we're going to do some testing on, that hopefully in 6 months we'll, or when we can reconnect again, Ben, I would love to share with you how that's going. But that we're going to keep a little under wraps now, but it's another type of very interesting exclusive heat recovery tech that I've uncovered on a recent business trip, again in Europe, where they're excited about what we've done with ThermStar, with Lapido inside, and they're saying, can we do something together on this? And I think the answer is we're going to give it a great go and see how it works, because it looks phenomenal. And it's got a lot of installs in Europe on this one too.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. If people want to connect with you, how should they do that? And specifically, who do you want to connect with most?
Yeah, so if you want to connect with us, I'd start saying, feel free to look us up. Our website is www.thermstar.com. So you can start there. Second is that I can be reached at scott.preston@thermstar.com, right? Our phone number, 833-667-7359, toll free. And then there's a menu system. You can talk to sales, engineering. You won't be wanting to talk to accounting yet, but you could. Or you can certainly, give me a call and ring through. You might get my assistant, you might get me, just depends. But I'm certainly happy to have a conversation. But, we work best by having conversations with potential clients, talking to them about what's the potential for their heat recovery. What can they do? We're in a fascinating space here where there's so much potential. There's so many opportunities. It's not about, is there an opportunity? It's more about just finding those people that say, I want to embrace this technology and what can be done.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So thanks for being here with us today. We appreciate your insight. And this totally delivered on my excitement of being able to talk to you about this really cool climate-saving tech.
Well, thank you very much, Ben. And I would just say thank you to everyone who's had a chance to listen. I really appreciate it. If I could leave you with just a couple of quick anecdotes. Number one is, can you believe the premise and want to believe the premise of use energy twice and pay for it once? Fundamental, right? We are the dirty air, clean energy. I did a nice flip there. It was almost a Freudian slip. So we are the dirty air, clean energy people, and we fully stand by what this has done in the marketplace, what we can do to help you, and please give us a chance. Give us a chance to be able to improve your working conditions, your cost profile. I'm a businessman. I wouldn't have invested my blood, sweat, tears, and the same of bringing a team on and doing all this if I didn't absolutely believe in this product, see it work, see the hundreds of installs, and say, this needs to come to America. We need to improve the market competitiveness of businesses here, and this is a great opportunity to do so, and I'd love to help you and explore it. So thank you very much, Ben. Thank you very much, audience, for your time.
Awesome.